Know what's crazy? The entire basis of the contemporary royal fairy tale could have been destroyed by a single 1997 magazine page. We're not referring to some hazy photo that armchair investigators have examined, a Reddit notion, or a tweet. We are discussing printed ink that has been stored in archives for almost 30 years, waiting to be examined. And the entire meticulously planned timeline began to fall apart when Tom Bower did, linking that one piece of evidence to everything else circulating about Meghan Markle. The problem with lying is this: the details you can control determine how strong they are. Furthermore, no one was considering managing an adolescent magazine spread in 1997. No one could have predicted that years later, that disposable paper would turn into the smoking gun that raises doubts about everything, not just Meghan's age. Those pregnancies that looked a little too well planned, her Hollywood career, her royal romance, and the reasons her own father would take the chance of public criticism to basically say, "The woman you think you know isn't who she claims to be." This has nothing to do with insecurity or vanity. This is about what happens when you try to pull off Hollywood's favorite trick, cutting years off your biography, inside a 1,000-year-old institution that is obsessed with dates, bloodlines, and documents. What if for years the Duchess we've been admiring, defending, or condemning is genuinely portraying a character? And what if the age of that character is only the first thread that reveals something much more significant? You can't dismiss the facts that sparked this entire investigation with a well-crafted palace statement, so let's get started. One of the upcoming stars to watch type lists that every adolescent journal runs is published in March 1997 by 17 magazine. Meghan Markle, age 21, page 90. Right there, pause. If Meghan was born on August 4th, 1981, according to the official record, she would have been 15 years old in March 1997, still enrolled in high school, and most likely anxious about her SATs. However, according to this magazine, which was printed in physical form and sent to millions of homes throughout America, she was 21. It's not a typo. A submission form was not misinterpreted by that person. There is a gap of 6 years, so enormous that it completely alters her story. A person's age cannot be inadvertently increased by 6 years. People lie in the opposite direction, if anything. Therefore, either they reported precisely what they were instructed, or this magazine has the worst fact-checking in publishing history. What makes it impossible to ignore is this: when Meghan was a nobody, this was published. There was no justification for lying. Her image is not being managed by the palace PR team. No brand worth $1 billion to defend. It was just a girl presenting her own details in an attempt to gain attention in Hollywood. Consider the impact this has on her whole Hollywood story. If in fact she was born circa 1975 or 1976, so she wasn't a young woman in her 20s hoping for her big break when she got the part on Deal or No Deal. She was a woman in her 30s who was already past the cruelest age group in the profession. The time frame shifts, the desperation shifts, and all of a sudden her quick ascent to land a prince begins to resemble a well-planned comeback rather than fate. We must first discuss why this is even important before moving forward. You may be asking yourself, who cares if she lied about her age? In Hollywood, everyone does it. You're correct, too. Indeed, they do. For women in particular, the entertainment business is cruel when it comes to age. While male co-stars in their late 20s are still being cast as action heroes, actresses in their late 20s are being informed they are too old to play the love interest. It's repulsive. It's not fair. Additionally, it compels women to make career decisions that are unachievable. We've witnessed it previously. At almost 30, Gabrielle Carter portrayed a high school student in Beverly Hills 90210. In Mean Girls, Rachel McAdams played an adolescent at the age of 25. The list is endless. Admitting you're older than 30 might literally destroy your career in Hollywood, which has always had a strange relationship with age. In order to maintain her competitiveness in a field that would prefer to recruit a 24-year-old unknown candidate over a 30-year-old with experience, Meghan Markle may have cut a few years off her age in order to continue receiving audition invitations. That makes sense. In a system that consumes women and discards them as soon as they cease to resemble Anan, it is survival. However, this is the point at which Meghan's circumstances shift from routine Hollywood business to something far more troubling. She didn't only fake a shot or lie to a casting director on an audition form. She brought that deception into the British royal family, one of the world's most well-researched, closely watched, and historically fixated organizations. While possibly living under a false name, she married a prince, had children in the line of succession, and established a whole public brand based on honesty and sincerity. That goes beyond simply breaking the law to get by. That would like introducing Hollywood glitz and glamour into a millennium-old establishment and hoping no one would notice. And at that point, the topic shifts from Hollywood to something far more important: the ultimate in deception. Let's now discuss her father, the one witness whose testimony is difficult to ignore. Thomas Markle's public remarks regarding the discrepancies in Meghan's official timeline struck a different chord than the typical tabloid conjecture. This wasn't an envious ex-partner or a pal with a grudge. She was reared by this man, who recalled her early years based on personal experience rather than Google. He recalled her grades in particular years, her graduation, and the point at which she began to take acting seriously. Additionally, in accordance with according to Thomas, those recollections contradict the official narrative that the palace propagated. Consider what a father must go through to accomplish that. The statement, "The narrative my daughter is selling doesn't match reality," is effectively going public. You don't make that choice lightly. Despite his flaws and untidy public personas, Thomas Markle was present for the important times. He held pictures of her as a newborn. He covered her schooling. He recalls birthdays as real-life occurrences rather than as articles on Wikipedia. Thus, when he suggests since Meghan is older than the palace made her appear, his suggestion that her official birth year may have been changed at some point has more weight than any internet theory could. And this is what makes his interviews unsettling. He doesn't rant or scream. He speaks slowly, almost melancholy, as if he realizes he's ruining his relationship with his daughter, but feels obliged to correct the record. He describes how he saw her rewrite history in real time, and how she created a public persona that didn't reflect the person he knew. He was referred to as bitter by others. He was pursuing celebrity, according to others. However, what if he was merely a parent who saw his daughter's dream triumph over reality and was unable to remain silent any longer? What if his testimony wasn't about retaliation, but rather about leaving a legacy and ensuring that someone who truly understands the truth speaks up before this story is fully written down in history books? Because a narrative becomes fact once it is approved by the royal machine. Thomas was aware that the genuine Meghan Markle, timeline and all, would be permanently lost if he remained silent at that moment. Here's what this whole thing is blowing my mind about. The royal family of Britain They have endured centuries of political turmoil, war, and scandal precisely because they keep accurate records. They have a whole staff devoted to historical accuracy, documentation, and genealogy. Kate Middleton's complete family history was investigated back generations when she began dating Prince William. They were aware of everything, including her family and her parents' company. It is required by royal protocol. So how in the world could a 6-year age difference that was reported in a well-read American magazine get overlooked? Either someone noticed the discrepancy and made the decision, or the screening procedure completely failed. Didn't matter. Both possibilities are unsettling. If they missed it, it indicates that Harry hurried through this marriage so quickly that a simple background check was omitted. This indicates that he disregarded centuries of royal etiquette that were intended to prevent just this kind of situation because he was so enamored and frantic to shut things down. Or worse, they might have discovered it. Perhaps someone in the palace found that 17 magazine page, saw the calculations were off, and decided that it was worth it to ignore the warning sign and welcome Meghan into the family. Perhaps they believed that a captivating multiracial American actress was the ideal example of modernism. The monarchy required, and a little sloppy paperwork was worth it. In any case, it is a significant institutional failure. For this is what people must comprehend. This goes beyond insecurity or vanity. Accuracy, dates, and truth are important when you're marrying into a family where succession and lineage are important, and children born of that relationship are physically in line for the crown. You cannot simply present a flexible biography and hope that no one will be interested. The monarchy imposes stringent regulations on who is eligible to marry into the family, what records are needed, and what backgrounds are acceptable. They've prevented unions on much less contentious grounds. Therefore, it shows either purposeful ignorance or catastrophic negligence for this to have slipped through. Since both situations indicate that the institution failed, and that failure is now being felt on a worldwide scale, I'm not sure which is worse. Let's now discuss why the age issue goes beyond ambition for a job or vanity. Let's discuss biology, since this is where the disparity begins to impact medical facts that cannot be circumvented through public relations. When Meghan gave birth to Archie in 2019, she was 37 years old, which is formally categorized as a clinically speaking, Elderly pregnancy entails higher risks and more stringent medical supervision. She wasn't 37 when Archie was born, though, if that 17 magazine is accurate, and she was born in 1975 or 1976. She was 43 or 44. And because a 43-year-old first-time mother has exponentially higher risks, that completely alters our understanding of those pregnancies. Increased incidence of preterm birth, preeclampsia, gestational diabetes, and chromosomal abnormalities. This is a medical fact, not a judgment. After age 40, fertility drastically declines and problems increase proportionately. Therefore, the control and secrecy suddenly start to make sense in a different manner when you add this background to all the strange contradictions in Archie's birth. The clandestine hospital decision, the conflicting timeframes, and the medical impossibilities in Harry's narrative. Consider it. Meghan would have faced tremendous pressure to conceive if she had been in her early 40s. There must be heirs for the royal family. The public anticipated infants. Let's face it, Meghan's entire worth to the organization was partially dependent on her capacity to generate those heirs. What occurs then while your biological clock is in operation? You've been lying about your age for decades, so you're out sooner than anyone knows? To what far would someone go to conceal that fact? Although I won't reveal everything, there have been rumors of surrogacy since day one. Meghan's bump appeared to fluctuate significantly in size between appearances. There has never been a reliable hospital photo, and the birth story deviates from standard medical procedure. When you consider that she may have been far older than anyone realized, everything becomes different. It explains why everything about those pregnancies seemed so planned, so regulated, and so unlike from typical royal life. Birthing processes, because they might have been concealing biology rather than vanity. Furthermore, if your entire public persona is based on being young, active, and effortlessly accomplishing your goals, acknowledging that getting pregnant at your actual age took drastic steps would destroy that meticulously crafted narrative. Let's examine why Tom Bower claimed that the official Archie birth tale was false. Because the impossibility of the palace story becomes evident if you comprehend the medical facts. Meghan gave birth in this calm, wellness-style setting with birthing balls and 2 epidurals. According to Harry's book, Spare. Candles, and after 2 hours, they recovered and departed Portland Hospital for Frogmore Cottage. Every detail of that account runs counter to accepted medical wisdom. 2 epidurals first. Physicians have stated unequivocally that this is not how epidurals operate. You do not receive 2 distinct processes. In contrast to taking more Tylenol, an epidural is a continuous stream of medication that may be adjusted. Therefore, either that information was made up for dramatic effect, or Harry misinterpreted what actually transpired. The 2-hour turnaround comes in second. The drive by itself from, depending on traffic, it takes around an hour to get from Portland Hospital to Frogmore Cottage. This implies that everything else, including birth, monitoring, recuperation, documentation, and discharge, had to take place less than an hour after an epidural, which necessitates waiting for the anesthesia to wear off, regaining sensation in your legs, bringing your blood pressure under control, and receiving medical clearance to depart. After an epidural, women are aware that they can hardly walk for hours. It is medically ludicrous that Meghan gave birth, healed, and returned home in just 2 hours. And then there's the scene that Harry outlined. Ambient lighting, birthing balls, and a spa-like environment. That's great for simple low-risk births. Meghan, however, was categorized as high-risk. It has been reported that she was over 35 and may have been suffering from preeclampsia. High-risk mothers are not permitted to give birth in wellness settings at hospitals like Portland. Instead of candles and yoga balls, protocol requires constant monitoring and quick access to emergency care. Furthermore, she wouldn't have been released at all if she had preeclampsia, one of the most serious pregnancy conditions. Treatment includes blood transfusions, magnesium sulfate, and monitoring the mother's blood pressure and keeping her under surveillance for a minimum of 24 to 48 hours. In 2 hours, you don't return home. In 2 hours, you don't even get out of your hospital bed. According to Tom Bower's hospital source, the account doesn't align with Portland's high-risk birth protocols. The smoking gun is that. Someone who works there is stating that the official account is medically impossible, but this is neither hypothesis nor conjecture. So why tell lies? Why create this complex fairy tale that disintegrates the once a medical professional looks at it? Because being caught in a blatant lie must be worse than the truth, whatever it may be. Because this story is about more than simply one woman's age or one unusual birth, let's take a step back and consider what we're actually dealing with here. This is about what happens when you live a meticulously crafted lie while establishing a whole brand on authenticity. For years, Meghan and Harry have positioned themselves as truth tellers, victims of an establishment that stifles their true selves, and courageous rebels who fled to live moral lives. They have discussed their truth in interviews with Oprah. Documentaries about their truth have been released. Harry authored a whole autobiography that purportedly exposed everything. However, the basis of their entire story is phony if these revelations are true. When you are the one rewriting history, suppressing documents, and controlling information, how can you say that you are being silenced and suppressed? With medical impossibilities and contradictions surrounding your age, your children's births, and your past, how can you sell authenticity? Despite its flaws, the royal family is based on proven ancestry. Because records are important, they are able to trace bloodlines back hundreds of years. Dates are important. The truth image is less important than the truth, even if it is difficult. Harry and Meghan, however, have taken the opposite action. They have given the narrative precedence over the facts and the proof. And it's falling apart now. The problem with lying is this: they need ongoing care. You must keep in mind what you said. Don't ramble. Verify that there aren't any outdated publications with awkward dates lying around. Finally, you make a mistake. At some point, someone, as if Tom Bower appeared, tugged a single thread, and everything fell apart. So ask yourself this: what else are they lying about if they are lying about her age? What actually occurred if the birth stories are medically implausible? And can we trust anything they say if their public persona is so meticulously crafted? This discussion is far from ended, so please share your ideas in the comments section. We're going to continue exploring the stories the palace doesn't want you to know, so hit the subscribe button. And never forget that even though the truth isn't always pleasant, it's always worthwhile to discover. Because asking what if everything we've been told is a lie is perhaps the most radical thing you can do in a world of perfectly manicured images and PR-approved storylines. You can't help but notice the flaws in the fairy tale once you begin to ask that inquiry.